starting my third project, my third loaf for the June Soap Challenge Club challenge, and this is wood grain soap, which, as I've said on the other two videos, I hadn't done this before. I'm very crunched for time, so I'm actually doing all of them today, so fingers crossed that they come out. So this is something new. The type of pour is actually very similar to the One Pot Wonder, with the sidewall pour, but how you cut it and some of the things you do with the colors and how you actually pour it does change with this. So that part I haven't done yet. The first two are nestled in the oven right now to cold process oven process. So the big difference with this challenge versus other ones is typically there's a advanced category and then there's a beginner category, and I'm in the advanced one. But for this challenge, they are doing a synthetic colorants, which would be micas and oxides. And so titanium dioxide and zinc oxide are not counted in the naturals. So they're doing a synthetic one and then they're doing a natural one. So the first two I did just micas, and then the second two, which would be this one and the next one, I'm going to be using plant-based colorants. Now, a couple changes for when I do my natural soaps, because I do have a natural line where I only use essential oils and I only use those plant-based colorants, is clays. Normally I use clays, and that also helps anchor those essential oils. However, those can accelerate trace, which I don't want to do. So I'm not going to be using any clays. And the other thing I'm changing with this batch and the next batch is that I am going to be putting all of those colors into oil. Usually I will put them into water, or I will infuse them, or like with indigo, I find it's best to put it directly into the lye solution. I'm not going to do that this time because I don't want to color the whole batch shades of blue. So that'll be a little bit different. Going through gel phase is an absolute must when working with natural colorants. So another big thing is typically when I use those natural colorants, I always use essential oils, but I don't have any well-behaved essential oils here other than an orange. But the orange I have is one that needs to be blended with other things because otherwise it'll fade. So that was not a requirement, so I'm going to be using fragrance oils for this, skin safe fragrance oils. So for this particular batch, I'm going to be using both of them for Brambleberry, Evergreen Forest, which is supposed to be well behaved. And it says that it discolors to an off-white. Some of the reviews said it discolored to yellow, but that may morph back. I'm just kind of anticipating it to turn yellow, just in case. So that's why I plan my colors a certain way. And then I'm going to use just a little splash of magnolia leaf and tonka. I had just a tiny bit left over from the batch I did right before this, and I want to go ahead and use it up. This one does discolor to a light brown, which is going to be fine. My colors, I'm going to have, my main color is going to be greens. So I have basil, I have chlorophyll extract chlorophyll that I extracted from basil, and then spinach powder. That will fade at some point. So a month or two down the road, it will fade to a very, very light green, a little bit brown. Hopefully that yellow will keep it a little bit green. But for when it's cut and for the next week or so, it'll be a nice green. Greens are really, really hard to achieve. And then I have, so the spinach is from Wholesale Supplies Plus. The basil was actually some that was gifted to me that I dried and then ground up, and then the chlorophyll extracted. And then I have indigo powder. Actually, I do have a video on that extraction that I did. So the indigo powder is from Wholesale Supplies Plus. I have not used this brand yet for the indigo powder. The last time I used it was from Brambleberry, which worked good, so I'm hoping this one will work good. I do know indigo does better when it's in the lye water, and it does better when it gels. Sometimes it turns kind of green. So either way, it's going to be fine with this. And then I have just a random brand of turmeric. And the turmeric, it's going to look shocking when you use turmeric. You use some and you put it in there, you're like, oh my gosh, I used way too much. That's always what happens. But then by the time it cures, you're like, oh man, I should have put in way more. So this will be a very bright yellow. And it's always, every time I use it, I'm like, oh man, I used too much. But then when it cures, it's really toned itself down. And then I have some activated charcoal that is from Essential Depot. So I think that's everything I've got. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it to a light trace, and then I'm going to take out the parts that I don't want to add the fragrance to. Then I'll add the fragrance to it, divide it out by these two pots. So the magnolia and tonka leaf last time started to accelerate about halfway. That one would be fine if you are doing something kind of basic. It wasn't like a bad acceleration, but it really wasn't the best for this particular design. I have no idea how the Evergreen is going to work. So the first batch I did was tobacco and bay leaf. That was amazing. I had trays for days. And I'm also using my slow moving recipe. So let's go ahead and get started. To cut the first of the naturals on the wood grain challenge. Isn't that cool looking? So this fragrance was supposed to discolor, potentially discolor to yellow. So that is very bright there, but it's not so much on the side. So cutting wise, usually I have 1-inch slices that are, I usually get 10 1-inch slice bars. So since I'm cutting horizontally, that wouldn't really work very well. So what I ended up doing is I'm going to snip off a little end, like what I usually would get with a 10-bar loaf, so they end up weighing the same. I'm going to cut off one 1-inch piece like normal, and then I'll cut the rest of them in the wood grain look. So what I did is I found the end that had the best pattern, which this one definitely does, and that is going to be the little piece that I'll cut off, and then the bigger bar, the 1-inch bar, will be the opposite end. So that way, hopefully a lot of the inside pieces will have the wood grain look. Now the end piece would look like a typical one pot wonder. This was the first one I did, and that had really fluid batter. This one did not. It set up more, and it's still really cool looking, but you can see where things set up more and at kind of at different rates. So this would be a super fluid batter. This would not. And this one also had, like you can see, that batter was really fluid, and this one was not. So depending on what the colorant was, what the additives were, because I didn't add the fragrance to all of it in that one. So let's go ahead and give this one a cut.